Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The cold steel of a suppressor pressed against his temple was the only warning Julian got before the smell of copper and rain overwhelmed his senses. Scream, and I'll paint this pristine white kitchen with your brains before you finish the first syllable. A voice rasped, low and wrecked with pain, coming from the shadow looming behind him. Julian froze, the ceramic mug of tea in his hand trembling just enough to spill a single, scalding drop onto his wrist, but he didn't flinch. In his line of work, or what used to be his line of work, panic was the precursor to death. He stared straight ahead at the reflection in the dark window, a man draped in black, soaking wet, clutching his side where dark blood was rapidly staining a violently expensive silk shirt. It was the neighbor. The one who had moved into the penthouse adjacent to Julian's secluded safe house 3 weeks ago. The one who watched from the balcony with eyes like a hawk scanning for prey. "You're bleeding out," Julian said, his voice terrifyingly calm, a remnant of his past life as the city's most renowned, and now disgraced, trauma surgeon. Observant. The intruder grunted, his weight sagging against Julian's back, the gun barrel digging harder into Julian's skin. "Fix it. I don't have equipment here. I'm just a..." "You are Dr. Julian Vane," the man hissed, the name landing like a curse. "The surgeon who played God and lost. I didn't pick this apartment by accident, and I didn't come here for a cup of sugar. Now move." The rain battered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the high-rise, masking the pained groans of the man lying on Julian's dining table. The man's name, Julian had learned through the grapevine of the building's hushed gossip, was Kalen Thorne. Rumors painted him as a reclusive heir to a shipping fortune, but the jagged laceration tearing through his oblique muscle told a different story. This was a knife wound, serrated and twisted, a signature of the Triad enforcers. Julian's hands, usually steady as stone, felt a phantom tremor as he cut away the ruined silk of Kalen's shirt. The torso beneath was a map of violence. Old scars, bullet grazes, and burns, a tapestry of survival that made Julian's stomach churn with a mixture of revulsion and fascination. "No anesthesia," Kalen gritted out, his teeth clenched so hard Julian heard the enamel grind. His hand still gripped the pistol, resting it on his chest, pointing loosely at Julian's heart. "That's barbaric," Julian muttered, pouring high-proof alcohol over his hands since he lacked proper scrub gear. "You'll go into shock. If I go under, I don't wake up. Those are the rules," Kalen gasped, sweat beading on his forehead, plastering strands of raven-black hair to his pale skin. His eyes, a piercing, unnatural shade of amber, locked onto Julian's. "If you try to call the police, or if you try to let me die on this table, I have a heart rate monitor linked to a dead man's switch. My pulse stops, this building burns. Do you understand?" It was a lie. A grandiose, logistical nightmare of a lie. A dead man's switch connected to building explosives required setup time Kalen didn't have, and the tech didn't align with his current desperate state. But Julian nodded anyway. In the face of a predator, you do not question the size of his claws. You simply try not to get scratched. "I understand," Julian whispered. He took a deep breath, the persona of the recluse falling away to reveal the surgeon beneath. "This is going to hurt." He poured the alcohol directly into the wound. Kalen didn't scream. He made a sound, a guttural, animalistic snarl that vibrated through the table and into Julian's fingertips. The gun in Kalen's hand wavered, his knuckles turning white, but he didn't pull the trigger. For the next hour, the only sounds in the apartment were the storm outside and the wet, slick sounds of needle and thread. Julian worked with the precision of a maestro, stitching muscle and skin with a sewing kit he kept for emergency repairs on his clothes. It was crude, it was dangerous, and it was the best work he had done in 2 years since his license was stripped. When the final knot was tied, Julian stepped back, his hands covered in Kalen's blood. He felt a strange, electric charge in the air, a tension that had shifted from mortal peril to something heavier, darker. Kalen lay panting, his chest heaving. He looked wrecked, beautiful in a terrifying way, like a fallen angel who had crawled out of hell. Slowly, he lifted the gun, aiming it squarely between Julian's eyes. Julian didn't blink. "I just saved your life." "You did," Kalen whispered, his voice raspy. Which makes you an accomplice. Welcome to the underworld, Doctor. You belong to me now. The following weeks were a blur of forced proximity and psychological warfare. Kalen didn't leave. He couldn't. His enemies, a rival syndicate known as the Vipers, were hunting him, and Julian's apartment, registered under a pseudonym, was the only blind spot in the city. Julian found himself trapped in a domestic nightmare. He was a prisoner in his own home, acting as nursemaid and chef to a man who watched him with a possessive intensity that made Julian's skin prickle. Why me? Julian asked one evening. He was changing the dressing on Kalen's side. The wound was healing nicely, a testament to Julian's skill. Kalen was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, looking less like a wounded animal and more like a king resting on his throne. I told you, Kalen said, his amber eyes tracking Julian's movements. You're the best. I'm a pariah, Julian corrected, taping the gauze down. I killed a patient. You took a risk to save a senator's son when no one else would touch him, Kalen corrected, his voice surprisingly soft. He died because he was too weak, not because you failed. The medical board needed a scapegoat. I don't care about politics, Julian. I care about capability. Julian paused, his hand resting on Kalen's warm skin. It was the first time anyone had spoken the truth about that night. You researched me. I research everything I own. Julian pulled his hand back as if burned. I am not a possession. Kalen caught his wrist. His grip was iron, yet his thumb brushed over Julian's pulse point with a tenderness that was more terrifying than violence. Aren't you? You have no family, no friends. You hide in this tower like a ghost. I'm the only thing that makes you real right now. He pulled Julian closer. The air between them was thick, charged with the scent of antiseptic and masculine musk. Admit it, Doctor. You like the danger. It's better than the silence. Julian wanted to pull away. He wanted to slap the arrogance off Kalen's face. But his heart was hammering against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that betrayed him. Kalen was lethal, a monster in human skin, but he was also the most vibrant thing to touch Julian's life in years. You're delusional, Julian whispered, but he didn't retreat. Kalen smirked, a dangerous curve of lips. We'll see. The dynamic shifted subtly after that night. The gun disappeared from the table. Kalen started helping, awkwardly chopping vegetables with a combat knife, fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom with a terrifying efficiency. They were playing house in the eye of a hurricane, waiting for the winds to tear them apart. It happened on a Tuesday. Julian came home from the market to find his front door ajar. The lock wasn't picked, it was shattered. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. Kalen. The apartment was a wreck. Furniture overturned, glass shattered across the floor. There was blood on the white rug, too much blood. Well, the good doctor returns. Julian spun around. Standing in his kitchen was a man he didn't recognize, a brute with a snake tattoo curling up his neck. Two others stepped out from the hallway, dragging a beaten and bound Kalen between them. Kalen looked bad. His fresh stitches had torn, blood soaked his side. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. But when he saw Julian, his expression wasn't fear. It was rage. Run, Kalen rasped, spitting blood. Grab him, the leader commanded. Before Julian could move, he was tackled. His face was pressed into the hardwood floor, a heavy boot on his neck. So this is the pet Kalen Thorne has been hiding. The leader sneered, crouching down to grab Julian's hair, yanking his head back. Pretty thing. Useful hands. Let him go, Kalen growled, struggling against his captors. He's nothing. He's just a civilian. He's your weakness, the leader laughed. We've been watching, Thorne. We saw how you look at him. You, the ice prince of the syndicate, playing husband with a disgraced doctor. The leader pulled a knife, a curved karambit. Let's see how steady your hands are after I take a few fingers, doctor. No. Kalen's shout was raw, desperate. The blade descended. Julian squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the agony. Bang! The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The weight on Julian's neck vanished. Warm fluid splattered across his cheek. He opened his eyes. The leader was on the floor, a hole in his forehead. Kalen was no longer being held. In a blur of motion that defied physics, he had headbutted one captor, shattering the man's nose, and snatched the gun from the other's waistband. It was chaos. Violence erupted, fast, brutal, and efficient. Kalen moved like water, like smoke. He was injured, bleeding, but his fury made him unstoppable. He shot the second man in the knee, then the throat. The third man lunged with a knife, but Kalen caught the wrist, twisted it with a sickening crack, and drove the man's own blade into his chest. Silence returned to the apartment, heavier than before. Julian lay on the floor, trembling, staring at the carnage. 3 dead men. And Kalen, standing amidst them, chest heaving, gun hanging loosely at his side. Kalen turned to him. The amber eyes were wild, dilated. He limped over to Julian, dropping to his knees, ignoring the blood soaking his trousers. "Did they touch you?" Kalen demanded, his hands hovering over Julian, checking for injuries. "Julian, look at me. Did they hurt you?" Julian shook his head, unable to speak. He looked at Kalen's side. The wound was pouring blood. Your stitches." "Fuck the stitches," Kalen snarled. He grabbed Julian's face, his thumbs smearing blood on Julian's cheeks. "I thought. When they grabbed you." His voice broke. The mask of the monster cracked, revealing the terrified man beneath. "You saved me," Julian whispered, the realization crashing over him. Kalen hadn't stayed just to hide. He hadn't used Julian just for medical care. Kalen could have escaped the moment the Vipers broke in. He had stayed to fight for Julian. "You're mine," Kalen said fiercely, leaning his forehead against Julian's. "I protect what's mine." "And who protects you?" Julian asked, reaching up to touch Kalen's bruised face. Kalen closed his eyes, leaning into the touch. "You do." The police sirens were faint in the distance, getting louder. "We have to leave," Kalen said, pulling back. "The police, the rest of the Vipers. This place is burned." "I have nowhere to go," Julian said. "You have me." Kalen stood up, extending a bloodied hand. "Come with me. It won't be safe. It won't be easy. You'll be hunting in the dark for the rest of your life. But you'll be alive. And you'll be with me." It was a choice between the wreckage of his old life, a life of safety, loneliness, and regret, or the hand of the devil. A devil who had burned down the world to keep a scratch off Julian's skin. Julian looked at the safe, sterile apartment, now destroyed. Then he looked at Kalen. He took the hand. "Let's go," Julian said. 6 months later. The clinic was hidden in the back of a neon-lit arcade in Macau. It was off the grid, unlicensed, and exclusively for the specialized clientele of the underworld. Julian wiped his scalpel clean, dropping the bullet into a metal tray. The patient, a young runner for the local triad, groaned in gratitude. "Clean exit," Julian said professionally. "Keep it dry. Don't get shot again this week." The runner nodded and scrambled out. The back door opened. Kalen walked in, wearing a sharp, tailored suit that hid the scars Julian knew were mapped across his skin. He looked powerful, commanded respect, but his eyes softened the moment they landed on Julian. "Busy night?" Kalen asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Standard," Julian replied, peeling off his gloves. 2 stabbings, 1 gunshot. "How was the meeting?" "The Vipers are dismantled. The territory is ours," Kalen said simply. He walked over, wrapping his arms around Julian's waist from behind, resting his chin on Julian's shoulder. "We're safe. For now." "Safe is a relative term," Julian murmured, leaning back into the embrace. "Regrets?" Kalen asked, his voice low against Julian's ear. Julian looked around the dingy clinic. It wasn't the sterile, high-tech hospital he used to rule. He was a criminal now, a shadow doctor for the mob. But he felt the warmth of Kalen's body against his, the steady beat of the heart he had saved, the heart that beat for him. He turned in Kalen's arms, looking up into those amber eyes. "None," Julian said. Kalen smiled, a genuine, rare thing. He leaned down, capturing Julian's lips in a kiss that tasted of danger and devotion. It was the taste of a forbidden life, and Julian wouldn't trade it for all the safety in the world. And that is how the doctor healed the beast, only to be devoured by him. If you enjoyed seeing how Kalen burned the world down for his lover, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you run away with a criminal if he saved your life, or would you turn him in? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, Two men, BL, Yowie, Man 1. Julian, wearing white dress shirt with sleeves rolled up, glasses, terrified but defiant expression, holding a surgical needle, distinct surgical scars on hands. Man 2. Kalen, tall, muscular, wearing unbuttoned black silk shirt stained with blood, dark hair wet and messy, holding a black pistol loosely, intense amber eyes, protective stance. Background is a modern luxury apartment kitchen at night. Rain on floor-to-ceiling windows, shattered glass on floor, dramatic blue and orange lighting, cinematic composition, high tension, sharp focus, intricate details.